Hey everybody, Mike Toy, Bonsai Boise. This is my Podocarpus. It's a little shaggy looking. Today I'm going to trim it up and put it into a bonsai pot. So this was actually a cutting from a larger Podocarpus from about 2 years ago. And somewhat of a neglected cutting at that. I've done almost nothing with this in 2 years. I trimmed it about once, I think. I don't have any good footage of the original plant it came from, and I don't even know for sure which one it was because I bought two about 2 years ago and they both died. But I do have a couple of pictures, so I'll show you what they came from. I'm not even sure what they died from. They just died, but their cutting lives on. So here's one of them, the one on the left there. And then here's the other. So last summer, I guess it's been about 3 months ago, I grabbed it off the bench and finally decided to trim it up. So it had grown a little shaggy looking, and I've never done a single thing with it up until now. I couldn't even tell you how good that soil is. With cuttings, sometimes I just put them in whatever soil I got laying around. So it's just been in that pot, just growing. So I gave it just a little trim, brought it down to a reasonable size. And that brings us back to today, November of 24. So it's really hard to tell in there which way is up. You can tell a big difference in the new leaves versus the old leaves. I will say also, I don't have the greatest track record with Podocarpus. The last two I had died. Not sure from what. And I had one before that, although it's been about 6 or 7 years ago, and it also died. Not sure what that was from either. I know that these are tropical or subtropical type trees. I did a little research on them, and they're kind of unique in a few ways. They're a conifer, so they're not deciduous, but they don't produce cones like a conifer. They produce little berries, which unfortunately this one doesn't have. This is the pot that I'm going to pot it up in. I thought it was a good choice. It's kind of a unique little pot. I don't have any others like it. I've never seen another one like it. It's brown, has like kind of a subtle little blue strip around it. So since I have a spotty track record with these, I'm going to take it kind of easy. Look at that. I don't know what that is. I think it's calcium buildup on some of those older leaves. Because when I say it's been neglected, I mean it's just always been in either the back of the grow tent or just some little spot somewhere on a bench. It gets watered and everything, but otherwise, pretty much no love at all until now. So it's dirty. I speed through some of this trimming because I was being pretty cautious. I don't know yet, from experience at least, how hard you can prune these. So I'm trying to be reasonable with it. I would imagine, and I'm speaking very generally here, but generally speaking, when you can root a tree from cuttings, it also usually means you can prune it back kind of hard. Because after all, if you can literally trim all of its roots off and stick it in soil and it grows, then it can probably handle a hard prune. But I'm sure there's exceptions to that rule, so take it with a grain of salt. I know that they do not like super cold temperatures. I don't know exactly where the line is on that yet, but being that they're tropical and subtropical, that means that they're not going to like freezing temperatures. I have heard these be referred to as a Buddhist pine. There are some historical records of Buddhist monks having these for, I guess, spiritual reasons, and also they are above average at air purification. So that's kind of cool. Probably not this one, judging by all that. You can see that calcium buildup on the leaves there. I'll give it a good rinse and try and wash it off here in a few. I'm still kind of just trying to decide how far back to prune it. Like I said, I don't want to overdo it. Some species of trees don't like the hard prune. Like in Ficus benjamina, for example, they get a little sensitive sometimes. But it is a bonsai after all, so you gotta do what you gotta do. Trimming leaves in half have found is a safe way of doing it. Again, not to compare it to a Ficus benjamina, but Ficus benjamina you cannot defoliate. So sometimes to get rid of old leaves, I just cut one in half and that causes it to produce new leaves. So I tried that here too. And in the meantime, I just put a little bit of wire on there just to give it a little more movement so it looked like, less like rabbit ears, and, smoother movement there. And I might actually rewire this again. I'm not super happy with the wiring job on there, so who knows. But it'll do for now. So we'll let it sit for a minute and I'll get the new pot ready. Using my newer mix that I've been using this year. Pine bark, perlite, pumice, volcanic rock, and a little bit of academia. Though I am going to try to phase academia out, I think. I've not been as impressed with it as everyone else seems to be. Kind of curious what I'm going to find in here. It's just, I barely even remember sticking a cutting in that pot. That's how just nonchalant it was 2 years ago. But come to find out, these things grow a lot of roots. Look at that. There's a lot of roots for a 2-year-old cutting. So I washed the roots. Now I'm just going to try to make sense of them here. I think it's kind of interesting how the trunk, the bark on the trunk, especially in the lower part, is starting to turn brown and harden off. The first Podocarpus I ever had did have some, more bark like looking, what am I trying to say? Normal bark and less of a green stick of celery like that one kind of is. A woody bark, that's what I'm looking for. But that one is just kind of right in the transition of turning into a woody bark look. I'm going to comb out all the roots, try to get them all flowing in the same outward direction. It's a bit awkward, but we're all a bit awkward at first. Figure out the spot I want it. Then I'm going to try to work some soil into the roots rather than have just a big ball of roots surrounded by soil. Just kind of going by hand there at first. Then I'll get a chopstick and sort of work it in the roots really good. And this part is kind of a long grind, so I'll speed through this. But you really want to take your time, though, when you're doing it, to make sure that there's no air pockets in there and you get soil in there pretty good. Give it a good thorough rinse. Doesn't matter how well I rinse these things, pre-rinse the soil, it's still always dirty when I first pot up a tree, no matter what. Put some stones in there for decoration and stability. I don't usually wire my trees in. I'm not saying you shouldn't. Maybe you should. If that's your preference. I usually don't, personally. You see it's right in the midst of getting that woody looking bark. There's a new shoot coming out, I see. Curious how long it'll take before the whole thing is a woody looking trunk. Maybe a year, maybe 2. I have no idea. So I think this is off to a good start. It's not show quality or anything, but it's kind of cool, I guess. Please feel free to share any tips and tricks and anything you know about Podocarpus. I'm not a super expert at them or anything. I'd love to see comments. That's how I learn. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a good rest of your day.